I love you from the bottom of my heart, really. I love you too. I love you so much.
And he stops crying and he starts happy. He smiles.
Love you more. Love you very much.
I do a lot of dancing.
I love you.
Good morning from New York City. Recognize that, y'all? So I am actually heading out to what they have in town today, which is KingVenture. They're gonna host it right where Michael Jackson actually recorded, not this album, but in my opinion, one of his best albums, which is History album. I think it's so personal, so incredible. I actually have a special place in my heart for that album. So, I'm super excited. They're hosting KingVenture for the second time in the United States. And it's right here in New York City. And I had to come out here just for the mere fact that it's actually being hosted where Michael Jackson recorded one of his greatest albums, in my opinion. And as you guys saw, I just walked by Studio 54. When Michael was get his groove on. Back in the day when he was filming The Wiz. Yeah, so you just never know what you may walk by at any given time. There's actually a lot of places out here that are Michael Jackson related. So it's definitely one of the states to hit if you're looking to walk Michael's footsteps. Definitely. I think, to me, it'd be pair in pair with California. So I think California, then New York City would be like the top. You also have Gary. But I think, for me, New York tops it. But yeah, so cool that KingVenture is actually being hosted out here on the East Coast. So last year it was hosted on the West Coast, Los Angeles, and this year they decided to host it out here on the East Coast, which I'm excited about. I'm an East Coast girl, even though I love the West Coast. But I think we're gonna have some people that actually worked on the History album. I know I've been to Brad's seminar. He's always talked about the Hit Factory and why the project was actually moved over here because of the earthquake. Michael got scared, climbed on a tree. He said, we're moving the entire project to New York. So, and I think Brad just posted that. I just read a post that Brad posted that they were trying to work on one of the Sony studios, but the quality wasn't there, and they did some, renovations and they tried to fix it up, but it just wasn't top notch. So Hit Factory definitely was at the time, so that's where the project moved for. I think he said like 90-something% of the project. It looks like the fans have lined up for New York Hit Factory. So here you see the fans having a great time creating their own party while they're waiting in the line to get inside the Hit Factory. Here I am getting my books autographed by the author Bryce Najjar. And of course, you can't take the Michael Jackson fans anywhere because they will create their own party and take over any room they're at. And we did it once again. Not alone. I am here with you. Though we're far apart, you're always in my heart. You are not alone. Everybody sing. You are not alone. I am here with you. I'm here with you. Though we're far apart, you're always in my heart. But you are not alone.
Wait, not yet. No, not yet. Everybody drop that. Play it. Everybody play it. Okay. Everybody jump. All I wanna say is that they don't really care about us. All I wanna say is that they don't really care about us. Beat me, hate me, you can never break me. Bill me, thrill me, you will never kill me. Shoot me, hit me, crush me, like a white. All I wanna say is that they don't really care about us.
Perfect. Thank you, thank you. I need like a side.
Hello and welcome to KB NYC History Begins. Firstly, we need to acknowledge the incredible venue we're in. And this was a pure fluke. So when we said we're going to do a convention in New York, we'll look around, we'll find a venue. We saw this venue, we thought, this looks great. And we Googled the address and we hang on, That's the same address as the Hit Factory. Oh, this is the Hit Factory. That's how we've ended up here. And I couldn't think of a better venue to celebrate the 30th anniversary of history. I'm sure you've all been in Studio 6, which is where Michael recorded. There's also some other things we'll talk about a bit later on. But we do have an action-packed lineup today. You have Diana Wolzak, who created the history statue, which you can see here. I'm sure you've seen his photos, and he's also and we have Dan Beck, who not only named the history album, but was the mastermind behind making sure that all of you owned a copy, and it was his life work at that time. So, and then rounding up the day's events, we have a special panel from people that worked with Dan Beck that ensured the album went out to market. They're going to give us an insight into how media responded, how international markets responded, why we never got Earth Song as a single in the US. We're going to find all that out later. But first, I think we should kick off with the person who made this statue. So she's hiding over there in the dungarees. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Diana Wolzak. For those of you not familiar with Diana, as I said, Diana made this incredible statue 30 years ago. Wow. Really? Actually, it's probably 31, right? Because it was 1994.
It is, yes. 1994.
And how does that make you feel today?
Well, I just feel so lucky, so fortunate to have had this incredible experience in my life, every day. I'm grateful.
So the
thank you for having me too. Thank you for doing this KingVenture nearby.
So we know that the statue is based on this, and we'll get to this incredible moment shortly. But before you received the call to work on the statue in 1994, what was your perception of Michael or your exposure to his music? And I'm leading into a story here, which after 10 years you revealed to me last night.
I thought you knew. I always was just absolutely, amazed by this human being, like the most famous guy in the world, really, right? Can you think of anyone more famous? It's more talented. He's just one of the greatest of all time, one of the GOATs. So anyway, I told Haz last night that I was pregnant with my first child, Io, but I didn't have her name yet. But I was taking my brother, who loves classical music, for his birthday to the Tower Records Classical on Sunset in LA. As we're walking along, I see the most beautiful vehicle. It was like a Rolls Royce with wood panelings all shiny, and it's like, wow, that's a beautiful car. My brother was only focused on music, so he didn't notice really, but we kept going across the street, went to the classical building, which is on the other side of the street, and then down a side road, just right there. And we went in, and there's a guy right at the door, and he said, I asked Gregory what he wanted. He wanted to look at the Mozart box sets. And I asked the guy, where are the box sets, Mozart box sets? And he said, oh, they're over here. And so we went and we were looking along the row and looking at Mozart box sets. And suddenly I smelled the most beautiful, floral essence, the perfume. And I had to look. And I turned my head. Michael Jackson was right next to me. I swear to God, it could not have been anyone else. He had black pants, red shirt. He had the little black hair thing and the hat. And I think I must have frozen or something. I should, Pat said, didn't you say hi to him? But I don't know. I must have frozen, and he whisked away. He just vaporized. And just at that moment, we were right at the front door open, and that beautiful car that we saw parked, turned down that side street, right, right there at the door. Turned right down, went, and it was him driving it. It was a convertible.
Oh, wow.
Nobody else knew, Michael. And I believe that would have been 1990 May, because his birthday was in May, so May of 1990.
So that would have been 4 years before you got the call to work on the history statue.
Almost exactly, yeah. Yeah.
It was meant to be. It was that fluorescence. It just.
Can you imagine? I had like no idea. He said, "Hey, Diana, Michael Jackson wants to do an album, and he wants to be like this 300-foot marble statue, something like what he saw in Russia." And he said, I can't explain that exactly, but that's what he wants. And he said, the thing is, Michael is always very, very picky, and if they have an artist do something, oftentimes he sees it and he wants to change it, and then they have to hire the artist again and again and again.
So this is one of your early drawings. I love that you've done
this
this.
would be shown to people 30 years later. I think it looks like it's stretched and it's fat looking. He would have hated it. But it was just a quick sketch just to explain to the photography studio.
So this is your work starting on the statue. So you did the shoot, and we'll come back to the shoot. But this is your early. Is that what was inside the initial clay model?
Yeah, that's the armature.
Since Michael passed away, a lot of the images from that shoot came out. Can you tell us what Michael had said to you about the shoot and his wish for those photos?
Oh yeah, he was a little uncomfortable with it. He wanted to make sure they didn't get out. And as a matter of fact, I have never, ever, I have my own set of prints that I used for it, and they were extremely useful for reference, but I never let them out, ever. But others may have. I had very little time to do what the first version I did in clay was 1 week.
Wow.
And I had to send it to Michael.
Oh.
I didn't send it. I sent videos and photographs after 1 week of working on the clay. I mean, that's insanely short. But then I had another week because he said, we got to fix this and that. But 2 weeks is still not enough to make something so important. But, I did my best.
This is the first time that we're seeing it in 30 years. It's never been unveiled. She's never brought it anywhere. So wow. And she's worked the detail is immaculate. It's beautiful. She did name her son while working this project. She named her son Jackson. So I'll probably name one of my sons Jackson too. I'm not gonna lie. But it's so cool. The artist is here. I'll try to get a picture with her. But yeah, so beautiful.
We did the pictures, and I hope you've seen them. They're examples of them upstairs with my stuff, but the iconic pictures of him with the mustache and all of that. But when we were done with that, I asked him to do these just kind of as an add-on because I was like that. I really love the shirt and tie combo, and I liked his hair like that, and I just thought that he just looked really, really interesting. So I said, Michael, let's do some additional headshots of you and all of that, and those have turned out to be some of my favorite images.
So, moving sort of to the present day, and I thought this was a nice backdrop picture to have as we talk. Recently, you turned down an opportunity to have your images licensed for a forthcoming documentary on the BBC in the UK. What I want to understand is, why did you make that decision to turn that opportunity down, and what impact does that have on you as a photographer to not license your work?
Great question. So there are a couple of people in the fan community that when something comes up, because the fan community is fascinating to me. There are hierarchies, and there are, people that, we don't like those people, and and that kind of stuff. And it's weird to me because I just don't like. It's like, you're all fans. It's cool, but there are a couple of people that I go to that's just sort of like get like the lay of the land, and so this producer from a production company that was working with the BBC called me up, and I rang up one of my friends to say, hey, what do you make of this? And this friend said, the BBC has been terribly, terribly unkind to Michael over the years. And the thing that you need to be concerned about is if you sell your images to them and they're in a film that paints Michael in a bad way, that the fans will hold you accountable. And it's a strange thing because it's like, I don't have any editorial control over what they do with the images after I sell them. But my decision ultimately was that I would rather be in good standing with the fan community. I'm pretty sure that I lost tens of thousands of dollars by making that decision. They do have the ability to go to Getty. I don't have any control over what Getty sells. So if images of mine appear in this BBC documentary, it would be something that they got from Getty. But I made that decision basically because I'm with y'all.
Thank you.
And I feel like that just given I'm just completely gobsmacked that you guys bought as many prints as you did in the earlier session, and we're going to have the meet and greet later, and there's still pictures that are available. But I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled that you guys find my images interesting enough that you want them on your walls. I'm so deeply, deeply honored about that.
Oh my gosh, here in the control room in the Hit Factory, New York City with Rocco!
Everybody. I'm just loving this room.
I know, right? I'm like, imagine Michael's voice just like blasting through these speakers.
Yeah.
Super loud. He would be out there
Mm-hmm.
singing. From what we heard, it'd be right here.
Here. Yeah. Right there. Yeah.
So, from what we heard. Can't confirm, but can't deny either.
That is true. But that is a strange random room.
It is.
They love the vibe in here.
It's possible.
Possible.
Because it's soundproofed. Yeah. So this would be the control room. This would be where Bruce Swedien, Brad Buxer, Brad Sumberg, Brian Biverts, and many other greats would be. And then if you walk through here, it's kind of like a little kitchen area.
One of the standout stories in your book is the story of Jam and the Jam short film. How did Michael Jackson and Michael Jordan come together for the Jam short film?
Well, think about the song title Jam. It's not hard to associate that to basketball. And so my brilliant idea was we should do a basketball video with Michael. And how should we do that? Well, the biggest basketball player on earth at that time was Michael Jordan. So I thought MJ squared, let's see if we can, when you're working with Michael Jackson at that time, you could think the biggest things imaginable. So anyway, I went to a marketing meeting and said, hey, I think we ought to, we were looking at Jam as the next single, and it's like, I said, it'd be amazing if we could put Michael Jordan and Michael Jackson together. Michael Jordan teaching Michael Jackson how to play basketball, and Michael Jackson teaching Michael Jordan how to dance. And I walked out of that meeting, and one person in the promotion department came over and said, "You are going to ruin Michael Jackson's career. There's no way he could stand up to Michael Jordan." And I said, "Excuse me."
I want names. That's why I want names. I want to who's that? That's right.
And I said, "Excuse me, but Michael Jackson's just as much of an athlete. It's just a different sport. He's a dancer. He knows choreography. He's done this for years." And I said, "I think he can stand up to him." So anyway, we went to work on it. Sandy Gowan, I believe, made the first contact with Michael Jordan's office, and they were game for it. And so then we got involved. We got David Kellogg, who was a commercial shooter, and we thought he could really capture this. And anyway, I gave him my idea of, just the basic idea. And then David fleshed it out and met with Michael, and they put the thing together. And so I don't know if you want me to go into the shoot itself, but...
Yeah, so it didn't come without its concern, right? Because Michael Jordan's availability was up in the air.
Yeah, as it turned out, this is in the middle of the beginning of the NBA playoffs. And, the Bulls were playing, I believe they were playing Miami. And they'd already won the first game, and I think they had to, it was best out of 5 in that series. And then if they won, they went on to the next series. So anyway, we're planning this thing, and in the middle of it, my wife and I are having our second baby. And so, I'm trying to balance work and what's going on at home, Lamaze classes and everything else. And I wasn't paying attention to the schedule. And it was like, and suddenly I realized we have this shoot scheduled with like a 4-day window where we had it planned. But I looked at the schedule and it was like, wait a minute, if the Bulls don't win this in 3 games, it's going to be 2 days and we're going to have to cancel the shoot. So anyway, I'm freaked out because I'm thinking, oh my God, the boss is going to say, didn't you think of this? I mean, so it was, budget was about $400,000. And so I called, what's it, McCormick, I think was the manager, Michael Jordan's manager. I called his office. I got his assistant on the phone and I said, you know, I think we may have to come up with a plan B here, and she said, well, why would that be? And I said, well, if the Bulls don't win in 3 games, then we won't have, we're going to have to cancel. And she said, well, they're going to win. And I said, well, yeah, okay, but we need to have a plan B. And she said, no, you don't. The Bulls are going to win. Michael Jordan is going to win. And just go sit down. So anyway, they're up 2-0, and it's the night of the 3rd game. And so, great 2-0. They win tonight. We're good. What happens is I get home, I don't know, a little after 8:45 from commuting from the office, and I turn on the TV and the Bulls are down by like 15 or 16 points. And I thought, oh my God, number one, they lose this game. My name is Mud, this is going to be horrible. And so I'm sitting there watching this game, and by halftime, they'd gotten to maybe 6 points behind. And then at the end of the 3rd quarter, they were still down by a point. And I thought, I have $400,000 riding on this game. And as it turned out, the Bulls won. And I was in a cold sweat. But they ended up, we shot the video in Chicago, and I didn't go because we had a baby.
There seems to be a running theme around history.
But if he had an idea that he got excited about and really kind of, just, he got a bee in his bonnet, it's like he got so excited about it that you could not convince him otherwise, And you have to remember, we're the record company, but we can't tell him what to do. It's his career. He's the entrepreneur. He's done all these amazing things. All you could do is suggest to him and give him ideas about, well, here's maybe the result we would have, So I was determined I should call Sandy Gallen and say, hey, what title does Michael have in mind for the album? And Sandy said to me, I don't know. Why don't you come up with something? And I said, well, it's a little personal. This is Michael's greatest hits. And I said, Sandy, I think Michael might have some ideas, So anyway, I said, please go to Michael and ask him. And so Sandy said, okay, I'll do that. So anyway, that night I was up with Dave and Polly, and we're talking, and I said, Sandy doesn't have any idea, but I said, I asked him to go to Michael and see if Michael had some thoughts on it. So anyway, next day I get a call from Sandy, and Sandy says, I spoke to Michael and he said, why don't you guys come up with some ideas? So I went back to Dave and Polly that night and said, well, Michael also wants us to come up with ideas. And Polly said very wistfully, she said, I just wish Michael could come up with a title like The Immaculate Collection, like Madonna. It's such a cool name for her greatest hits, And I got to thinking about that. That night I went home on the Long Island Railroad, and I got to thinking about what Michael had said at the studio, and it was like, well, one of this double album is his history, and the other album is his story. And so that's So I wrote it down, capital H, capital I, capital S, and a small T-O-R-Y. So I came back to the office the next day and I met with Polly and Dave again. And I said, well, I had this idea. And they said, yeah, very nice.
Looking at the history album with 2025 eyes, and there is a real difference in society now and in culture and the way we view things. We're very much in a time period where you are celebrated for being proud of yourself, living in your truth, celebrating your success, being proud of what you've accomplished. And with history, Michael was very much saying, I did this. Look at this new. I am the biggest artist on the planet. Yes, let's have a statue of me. Yes, this is the best music out there. And it was almost like the response from the critics was, how dare you be proud of what you've done? How dare you be pleased with everything you've achieved? You've come from Gary to here. How dare you celebrate that? Whereas now, if an artist did that, they would be like, wow, look at them. Aren't they good?
Yes. And also there's a big difference between sensibilities in the U.S. and international. I mean, the international market, celebrated Michael. Again, we had the media influence here that was the tabloids were, initially against him, and then that started to spread to mainstream print, and then started to spread to the entertainment TV shows, and that's again where we were looking at radio abandoning him. And what's interesting is looking back, and I just really centered on this in the last couple of weeks, is that we brought Scream in at number 5, and Polly and I worked on this strategy of radio points and retail points and how we could come in the Billboard charts. And we were trying to bring it in at number 1. And Michael was just so proud of this idea. Well, we didn't make it the first week, came in at number 5. But Polly and I got back together and we came up with it, and we brought You're Not Alone in at number 1, which had never been done in the industry ever before. And so we accomplished that. But now, if you look back, the next 14 years of Michael's life, he only had one top 10 single in the U.S. And it's because pop radio left him, and, he had some chart records. But so our fears really were real, that we knew they weren't going to stay with him. And it was brutal. And I think the one thing from the book is to understand how a man can stand to hear those things, to hear that negativity about him, and, I gave Michael market research and things, and it was just painful for me to give to him, but he wanted it. He is a competitive guy. If you go back, if you listen to Kobe Bryant, he'll tell you that Michael mentored him on competitiveness, and Michael could stand up to Michael Jordan. And, so you have to understand, this is a guy who had the courage to face, the most brutal attacks that could ever be done.
Helped bring the history album to the market. So, I've got to get all these names right. Please welcome back to the stage, Dan Beck, and also welcome Laurie Lambert, Lisa Kramer, Linda Yuri Greenberg, and Perry Kennedy. So I just want to quickly go through and introduce everybody by face and by name. So you're all familiar with Dan, who we just spoke with. Then we have Lisa Kramer, Laurie Lambert, Linda Yuri Greenberg, and Laverne Perry Kennedy and her stylish sunglasses on the air. So you are what I would call probably part of the dream team that came together, or the Avengers as we promoted it online. I don't know if you saw, of the History album. So you are the History Avengers, and that's what I'm going to refer to you as, please or fair. So to help understand your roles and also the synergy between departments, when you learned a new Michael Jackson project was coming, what happens?
You all know who was just our president. From the research side, we started checking what he had done, what was going to happen, and we would start doing marketing research to find out what the fans thought. That was the first thing that happened in my department.
Everybody would just be so excited. I remember when, which video was it? One of the videos. Anytime there was a new video, we would all gather in the conference room and everybody would start screaming, would play it again. Then you call all your friends and say, I just saw the Michael Jackson video. And every time there was a release of a single, I would go home and have a party. I almost got put out of my apartment because it made so much noise, but it was always a big deal. And in urban press, it was a really big deal because they always stood by him, you know, regardless of all the negative press. They were always like in his corner.
As dance number 2 throughout this project, first of all, when he first brought me on, I was a relatively junior product manager and was just so excited and so thrilled to be part of this kind of a, really for my career, it was a profile making project. My role was to sort of be the voice inside the company. Sony Music at that time, Epic Records was one part of Sony Music, but Sony Music was an enormous machine with various different departments, all which got involved of the release, any release. But with a release of this kind, everybody was completely engaged and had to be engaged. The pressure was insane. So from Lisa, who was at the international side of things, countries all over the world, inside Sony Music, the distribution department, the promotion department that dealt with radio, the publicity department, which was Laverne on her side, and the other publicity department on the pop side, the dance music department. I mean, it was endless little factions that we had to sort of rally to get behind a release like this. I mean, another part of my role was to get the other parts of the Sony Corporation involved, which was Sony Pictures, Sony PlayStation, Sony Electronics, because when something like this came out, everybody had to like put their best foot forward, and it was a tremendous task for everyone. I don't think anybody up there can take credit for even one iota of it. It was a giant machine that all worked behind every release, but when a Michael record came out, it was all hands on deck.
Wow.
And I was in charge of international for Michael Jackson. So I was basically the liaison between the US company and the Sony Music companies all over the world. And Michael was bigger outside of America than he was in America. So there was I never had to sort of push Michael on anybody because everybody was waiting for it. So it was huge news when we could announce a Michael Jackson album. It was huge. And
Yeah, but you orchestrated all those countries. That was the
yes, but it wasn't like I had to talk anybody into anything.
Don't undermine how hard you worked.
I was saying I didn't, but everybody was on board. Everybody was screaming for information. The more information, one of my jobs was to just constantly feed information. And as you know, there was no internet then, so it was a lot of. I think by the time History came out, there was I remember spending night after night after night in my office, just typing up huge emails with all kinds of information. But for us, it was very, very exciting, and for me personally, it was very exciting because it was such a big release and everybody was so open to it. It was quite extraordinary.
So nobody went home and was like, oh no.
Nobody went home, period.
A word surrounding that era is pressure. Michael mentions the word pressure in Scream over and over again. You've spoken, Dan, about the pressures you faced with the record. what pressures did each of you face in getting history to happen and go out to market?
I think I can probably speak for all of us and say we all probably aged about 5 years during the course of that 24-month period, right? The pressure was enormous. And, a lot of people think working in a record company, oh my God, that's so fun. It's you guys get to meet all these people and do all. Yeah, we do. And we are all very, very blessed to have had the careers that we've had. But I will tell you that it is an enormous amount on your shoulders when you screw up one little thing and it is all your fault. One of the roles of a product manager, which I was, Dan was like the super product manager, but what we always used to say is if everything goes well and the record's a success, it's the artist is brilliant and it's better. If something goes wrong, it's the product manager's fault. Anything goes wrong, it's the product manager's fault.
And one thing is that pressure didn't necessarily come from Michael. It came from internally in the company.
Well, it was like circulating from everybody, and it was just a lot.
My pressure was different because my pressure was from in the U.S. company. Dan had and Dave Lou had daily access to Michael and to Michael's people. All the affiliates around the world do not have that kind of access. I didn't have that access. So I had to make sure my pressure came more from the people who ran international and the everyday marketing people in the companies around the world. I had to make sure that they had all the tools they needed to be able to do what the US company was doing.
And that meant that Lisa was in my office every day.
My pressure was knowing that I would be asking people questions. And sometimes the answers to those questions were not things that Michael and Sandy Gavin wanted to hear. I had to go out to Los Angeles one time to present the research directly to Sandy Gavin because he wanted to hear it from the person who had done the research. And going out for that was very nerve-wracking because there's negativity. If you ask people questions, there's going to be negativity. But Michael loved research. Michael was somebody who bought research himself. There was a company called Teenage Research Unlimited, and he bought their research to know what were teens thinking about him. He would put questions in anywhere that he could, and he would ask for research from us at specific times to really understand what the fans were thinking, what other people were thinking. So that was really my pressure, was to know that sometimes I didn't have the greatest news to impart. And when you have a very, superstar artist that you're going to be telling some things that are not easy to take, it means there's pressure. But Michael, as I said, wanted to know, what does the research show?
I didn't really have any pressure.
And Laverne, and that's because the black media always said Mike was back.
And that's true. And I'm sitting here while you guys are talking, I'm like, what kind of pressure do I had a lot of fun, actually. I think my pressure was more from the black press in terms of if he was going to do an interview with Pop, whatever magazine, is he going to, talk to Johnson at Jet Magazine? Which he had like a one-on-one with him. They were friends, but it was the pressure from the press. So what are they going to do on the Pop side? So we make sure we get the same thing done. But I was having a good time. It was fabulous.
So for after Earth Song obviously didn't happen, history kind of almost finished in the US. We had They Don't Care About Us, we had Friends from Moscow in Europe, and they were huge hits for Michael. What changed? Did the campaign change? What changed for Michael to suddenly go from having, Scream going at 5 and You're Not Long Going to number 1, and suddenly the rest of the singles are just not appearing in the US?
Again, I think the just fallout from the HBO special collapsing just took the air out of everything. And then from a retail standpoint, we had shipped tons of records out there. And the retailers were now saying, I got to send some of this back. So the sales department was like, we've got no momentum to go on. So I think it just was crushing to each department. It was crushing to the radio department, the sales department. There was no news story for for the publicity people. Certainly, we got tons of play from MTV and VH1 and BET, and but that was it. And there was exposure. It was radio exposure. There's just no chart action because of that situation.
I also just want to say that I think internationally we always had more singles than the U.S. did. Internationally, they just kept pushing it. And the U.S.
Lots of success.
Right, and the U.S. sort of always was finished before us.
By the way, this is not me holding anybody accountable. I'm just asking questions that people have wanted to know for a long time. Would compare to working with other artists that you were working with at the time.
You want to answer that?
I think, as I mentioned before, my job was to work on pretty much all of the releases. So Columbia, Epic, everything. And I can tell you for a fact that working on a Michael Jackson release was not, it was not calm. And calm was a word that you could use for some of the other artists that we had. Where if I was doing research on Celine Dion or Gloria Estefan or some other artists, it was different. But Michael Jackson was also very exciting. And that was the main thing, that when you were working on a Michael Jackson release and doing research and talking to people and asking them questions, the animation on people's faces, especially for the fans, was just huge. And it would be big for other artists too, but not quite the same way. And one thing that we have talked about, Dan, I think, was just the fact that there were women especially who were just fans of Michael's and had been fans all along. And we're always excited about that. Whereas some other artists, they came and went based on the single. If they liked an artist single, they were a fan. And if the artist put out something the next time that they didn't like, they'd move on.
Grew up with it too.
Exactly. They'd known him, so many people had known him since he was, this big, with his family. So the Jackson 5 was part of his career for them. But it was really a different level of excitement, I think. That's what I would say.
I worked with a lot of other artists, as we all did. But what was interesting about a Michael Jackson project was you didn't have to explain yourself. You got a wow whenever you said, I'm working on a Michael Jackson project. It was, well, still to this day, people say to me, what did you do in the music industry? And it's the first thing I say. Well, I was Michael Jackson's product manager. And I worked with a lot of other people. I worked with Prince, I worked with Amy Winehouse, I worked with tons of people. But that's always the first thing I say. And with great pride, actually, with great pride and honor.
For me, I also work with I worked with Gloria Estefan, I worked with Pearl Jam, but Michael Jackson was just bigger. So there was something very exciting about the bigness of the whole project. And it was just really fun being able to help all our affiliates around the world do what they wanted to do with Michael. With the album and getting them everything they needed and giving them updates and just, I remember after History came out, going into Dave Blue's office with, it's number one here, it's number one here, it's number one here, it's number one here. I mean, that was crazy. We didn't have that with other artists. And it was very exciting. Everybody around, there was backlash for some of Michael's things around the world, but it didn't really affect the sales and it didn't affect his audience. So people just kept going. And our affiliates loved him. They loved Pearl Jam, they loved Gloria Estefan, they loved Luther, Michael Jackson was on a whole other level. And internationally, we had tours. So there was a big tour around the Dangerous album. There was a big tour around the History album. So that was also why the records kept going for us, because we had the tours.
Yeah.
So, and the tours and the opening dates of the tours where we would bring people in from all over the world. And for the Dangerous album, we had a huge carnival out party in Munich. So it was always an event
And we also had
internationally.
budgets. We had the budgets
Well,
for that. That was
yeah,
another big thing,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because we anticipated the sales were going to be greater than globally than any other artist. So we, as marketing people, were given, the tools we needed budget-wise to get it done. You especially.
Yeah.
I mean, you needed photos, you needed this, you needed that. Videos, we kept getting them. Dan had, we had budgets for videos that were unheard of, but that was, a really big part of this.
Anyway, so that's what was different. It was just a whole complete other level.
What was the question?
I think I know the question, but I want you to.
How does working with Michael, a Michael Jackson record, compare to working with other artists at the time?
Well, from my standpoint, I didn't really work with Michael. I worked with Luther. Luther came to my office. I went to his place. We, I interacted with Sade. I've been to her house. I mean, so it was different. I mean, Michael was just like, might as well be, the Wizard of Oz or something. I mean, it's not like I sat down and said, look, I discussed the press, plan or anything like that. But it was always a big thing when his release was coming out. But the interaction wasn't there, which is something that I would have loved, but I didn't expect it. I mean, because very few people, Dan is one of the lucky ones that really, and I didn't realize until Dan wrote the book how close you and Michael were. I was really surprised to see all that. And, you did a great job, and the book is wonderful. Did you all buy one yet?
So I am getting shouted at for the timing. So I want to kind of wrap up by saying we all know that later on in time, Michael's relationship with Sony obviously deteriorated for various reasons, and we won't get into that. But I'm really appreciative that the five of you are able to be here and share your positive experiences, because I've sort of been banging the drum for years, as you know, Dan, and saying like, when you say Sony, it's not everybody at Sony. And I believe you five are testament to that you really did have his back, you really supported the record, and you believed in him and what he was trying to achieve. And so I do just want to say a huge thank you for that, because to give up your time to come and share.
Okay, so can we bring it over some? I don't want to touch it.
My tired face. Steve, I'm expecting great after effects on the face.
Okay, here we go.
But I will still have guards and lasers around that day.
Let's get Jackson in.
Okay, jump in.
How are we doing this? Oh, I see people with glasses on the floor. I see how they feel.
Jackson, you got to squeeze it a little bit. Okay. Yes. Like get your 1 foot behind the platform. There you go. There. That's what Perfect.
I'd like to encourage everyone to head towards the exit.
Good.
Amazing.
All right.
Right here, because he was looking out. That. I was like, who are you talking to? At first I thought he was talking to himself. Wow. And I guess the mixing room would be right there, and that would have been. Sorry.
Okay.
The video thing.
Perfect.
Cause I'm such an failure to compensate for a child. I've never known. Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Have you seen my childhood? Yeah.
Mrs. Jackson. Yeah, right. Yeah. Yep, that's what he was saying. Perfect. I'll send it to him. Like, kiss them. I'm dead good. Can you send me?
Yes, of course. Perfect. Wonderful. Walking around the hallways of the Hit Factory. We just walked out of the studio. Michael Jackson? Michael Jackson! His name is on the wall. There's one of the studios. You walk through here, that's downstairs. You go through there, Studio 4. So this is what inside Hit Factory looks like. Explain the things I feel for you. Like you know it's true.
This is it.
Together we'll cry happy tears. The nations turn their swords into plowshares. We could really get there if you care enough for the living. Make a little space to make a better place. Heal the world, making a better place. If you care enough for the living. Make a better place for you and for me. What a day. What a night. I am deliciously exhausted. Today was so fantastic, so needed, so craved. Like, I'm in New York City, as you guys know, and New York needed this. I got to see some amazing people. I got to meet some amazing people. I feel so fortunate, so blessed. I got to meet people who worked with Michael, who knew Michael, who Michael appreciated their art and what they did. That was so wonderful, so fantastic. Everybody was so kind, so nice. This KingVenture out here in New York City was incredible. Then the after party, we did not sit down. I mean, I sat down a little bit, but you didn't sit down. You sat down for a little bit and then got right back up, dancing, grooving. Michael played all night. You got a little bit of the Jackson, but it was just constant Michael on the TV, and it was like what we wanted, what we needed, a dance party, a celebration party for Michael. Michael was fun. Michael was great energy. Michael was music, and that's all we want and crave. So I'm so happy that they booked this room. It was just for us, and so amazing, so delicious. I can't wait for the next one. I mean, like, if you're looking for a place to hang out, to vibe with other fellow fans, people who understand you and get you, this is the event. This is the place to be. Like today, this night was incredible. I was gonna say last night, but tonight was incredible. So craved in the MJ community. So thank you, Pez. and Sebastian for this event. Thank you for bringing it out here to New York, the city that never sleep. I love New York City, no pun intended. Like, I love, love, love New York. You definitely feel Michael's magic in the city. At least I do. I feel Michael's magic. So for it to be hosted here, perfection. Chef's kiss. So I hope they do it again. Please bring it back to New York. And guys, you have to come. You have to check it out. The panel was amazing. Some of the guests showed up to the after party. That was awesome. That was sweet. And it was just wonderful. Like, this is definitely going to be one of the highlights. And you got to party to MJ in New York. Like, heck yeah. I'm rocking my MJ. So I wore this shirt. Can you guys see? So I wore this shirt and I was supposed to change it and I didn't. There was no time for a wardrobe change, except for Pets. But his wardrobe change, which I loved. But yeah, like, I can't wait for the next one. It was history, celebrating history. Like, that album needs more love. But oof, I'm so happy, so happy. This was beautiful, magical, wonderful, beautiful. Smells really simply wonderful. Wrong album, but it's still New York City album. Da, 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 da. But yeah, like, y'all, MJ fam that was here tonight, that showed up, I love y'all. I really do. Y'all were a vibe. Y'all did not, like, disappoint at all. And I hope we get to meet again and hang out. So thank you, KingVenture, and thank you, Michael, and thank you, everybody. Please check out the next one. And New York City, I love you. Peace.
Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Michael, you go. Yeah.